It's late now. The stars blink gently outside your window. You don't have to do anything. Just breathe in and out. Tonight, you're not staying here. You're going somewhere far, with a single breath. The world fades, and when you open your eyes again, you're in Japan, over 200 years ago. The year is 1707, in the peaceful Edo period. There is no war, no rush. People move slowly, like the seasons. Even swords sleep now, folded away with old stories, in this story. You are Suta, 12 years old, living at the edge of Kyoto. Your father once served a lord, but now runs a quiet tea shop. Your mother sews and cooks, her hands always warm, and you walk each morning to a DJ, not to learn how to fight, but how not to, how to be still, how to listen. This morning, you wake to the faint gold of sunlight passing through the shoji above. The tatami mat beneath you smells of straw and last summer's sun. No one calls you, there's no rush. You fold your blanket gently, just as your mother taught you. Quiet hands. Quiet heart from behind the door. You hear firewood pop and a kettle hiss. A bird chirps once outside. Maybe a bush warbler. You slip into your kikogi, soft and clean, its fabric smelling faintly of soap. As you tie your belt, something inside you settles. This is where your day begins. In the kitchen, your mother greets you with a warm smile and breakfast. Miso soup, white rice, and a single red yumiboshi. You bow your head. Ita dakimuso. The soup warms more than your body. It fills the quiet space behind your ribs. Your father's sword hangs above the hearth, long silent in its sheath. He's already left to deliver tea to the monks. You'll see him again at sunset. Now, it's your turn to go. You step into the morning. The stones are still damp from last night's rain. Clotheslines sway above, carrying forgotten dreams. You pass the old woman who sweeps her steps. She nods. You bow back. No words are needed. At the little shrine, 2 fox statues keep their silent watch. You glance at them, not for luck, just to say hello. Then comes the DJ. It stands simple and strong. Its wooden beams, shaped by seasons and time. You bow at the gate before entering. Inside, the air smells of pine, dust, and quiet effort. 12 students are already stretching, their uniforms dark and neat. Wooden swords slice the air, not in anger, but in memory. One boy catches your eye, Daisy. Older, sharper. He never helped you up when you fell. But today, something feels different. The room, HUSHES. Sensei Ishikawa enters. He carries no sword. He doesn't need one. His eyes hold the stillness of snow. He bows once, then says just one word. Begin. And the world starts moving. You stretch. You breathe. You move with the rhythm of practice. Slow, sure, balanced. Your shinai whispers through the air. Each strike is like a question. Each parry, a quiet answer. Then, sparring. You're paired with Akiko. She's quick and fair. You nod, she nods. Then the dance begins. Tap, step, strike. You meet her with calm hands and steady feet. One clean hit to her wrist. She bows. Sensei doesn't speak. He only watches. And nods. During break, you sit near the open door, sipping cool barley tea. The scent of old wood and sweat floats in the air, not heavy, but familiar. Outside, a red maple leaf spins down slowly, like time remembering itself. As you watch it land, Daishi walks past. He doesn't laugh. He doesn't sneer. He just looks at you. Not like before, as if something's changed. You wonder why. But then the bell rings, and the afternoon breathes again. The bell fades, and the light in the DJ changes. No longer silver morning, now golden and warm, like sunlight through soft leaves. A quiet wind slips in through the side windows. Your cup is empty. Your name is called. You rise. Then you hear his name, Daichi. He turns calm, ready. His shinai, already his shinai, already in hand. He nods, just enough to say he's heard. His eyes catch yours, steady and bright. Your chest tightens. You step forward. The floor beneath your bare feet feels familiar. You both bow. The room holds its breath. Sensei says nothing. He waits for stillness. And then, without a word, it begins. Daichi moves first, fast. His bamboo blade flashes toward your shoulder. You block, barely, a sharp sound. He recovers quickly, too quickly. Another strike, you step back, breathe, find your center. Then move. Your strike tests, not threatens, but he does not yield. He parries, he counters, low and quick, and it lands, not hard, but enough. The sting sharpens your breath. You step back, sword raised, but your heart is unsteady. He didn't hesitate. You weren't ready. The match is over. You bow. He bows. You return to your spot and sit, quiet. Still, the wooden sword rests across your knees. The others continue. You watch. Akiko spars gently with a younger student. A girl helps a boy to his feet. Laughter follows, but not yours. You press a palm to your side. Just a red mark, barely visible. Yet, the bruise isn't on your skin. It's somewhere in your breath. You wonder if Daichi meant it, if he struck just to win, if he knew it would land. The thought doesn't speak loudly. It lingers, a quiet question that never quite leaves. You don't speak of it, not when the group bows again, not when Daishi glances across the room, not even when you walk home. The path is the same, but your steps feel strange, like your body belongs to someone else. The shrine foxes watch you pass, their stone faces unreadable. At home, your mother folds laundry. She sees you, but says nothing. You bow. You eat in silence. Sweet potato, barley rice, it tastes fine, but only part of it reaches you. You don't mention Daishi, not the strike, not the look, not the silence afterward. That night, your father returns late. He unwraps green tea, sits beside your mother. They speak softly. You sit near them, legs folded, eyes open, pretending to listen. But your thoughts are elsewhere. Still in the DJ. Still holding that moment when the lights dim and the futon is laid out. You lie awake. A spider crosses the ceiling beam. You turn to your side and ask yourself a question. Why did it matter? It didn't bruise. It wasn't unfair. It was clean, fast, intentional. Maybe that's what hurt. Not a mistake, but a choice. The next day comes without waiting. You wake again to pale light. The same folded blanket. The same soft sparrow tapping outside. You dress. Your mother hands you tea. You thank her. You walk. The DJ feels the same and different. The others laugh softly. You bow. You join them, but you don't speak. Sensei enters. He looks at each face, then says, "Today, we train in quiet. No sparring, just form." You breathe easier, and yet, you almost miss the sound of swords. At lunch, you sit beneath a tree near the gate, a rice ball in your hand, warm sun on your shoulder. A shadow approaches. Daichi. He stands beside you, then sits. You don't speak. He opens his bento, fish and rice. Choose once. Then says, "You're fast. I didn't expect that." You don't answer. Then quieter. "I didn't mean to hit hard. It just happened." You look at him. He meets your gaze. No apology. No excuse. Just truth. Somehow, that's heavier than an apology, but also a real. You nod. He nods back. You eat in silence. The wind rustles above, and something inside you, something tight, begins to loosen. Not all at once. Just enough taut, enough to breathe fully again. That evening, you walk home with even steps. Not because you won, not because he did, but because something passed between you unsaid, and that was enough. That night, you fold your robe and glance at the sword above the hearth. Your father's sword. Still, untouched, you wonder if it ever struck like Daichi's did. You wonder if it's possible to hold power and not use it, and as sleep pulls you under. You feel something you didn't feel yesterday. Not victory, not bitterness, just a quiet kind of peace. The peace of not striking back. The moon is high tonight, soft and quiet behind thin clouds. It doesn't shine too boldly, just enough to remind you it's there. The world outside your window has gone still. Even the neighbor's cat has curled into silence. You lie on your futon, wrapped in the summer blanket your mother stitched last year. It smells faintly of cedar and charcoal. The tatami beneath you is familiar again. But your body remembers the last 2 days, the matches, the sting, the silence, and the things left unsaid. You should be asleep, but sleep hasn't come so. You stay with the wakefulness, tracing the wooden beams above you, the same ones you've watched since your first dreams. And then, gently, a memory arrives. Not loud, just there, like someone placing a hand on your shoulder. You see Daiichi. You remember the strike, the moment it landed, the quiet after, the way he sat beside you under the tree, not asking for forgiveness, not explaining, just being there, and somehow 'twas enough. Not because it made anything right, but because it didn't pretend. You turn onto your side, pulling the blanket close. The house is asleep. Your father's breathing deep. Your mother's soft, like pages turning. They don't know what happened on the DJ floor. They trust the world to teach you, and they're right, because something is teaching you, even now, in this quiet space between ache and air. You begin to understand something small but steady. Not every hurt is unfair, and not every apology needs words. A few nights ago, if someone had asked you what forgiveness meant, you might have said, when someone says sorry, or when the pain goes away. But now, it feels different. It feels like setting something down, not because someone else made it lighter, but because you no longer want to carry it, not out of defeat, not out of anger, but because carrying it too long keeps you from holding anything else. You exhale slowly, no ceremony, no thought, just stillness. And maybe, just maybe, that's where forgiveness begins. The next morning, everything looks as it always does. Your mother stirs rice, humming, a tune you've known since you were small enough to hide under the table. Your father sharpens a tea whisk, the soft scrape of bamboo filling the air. Sunlight filters through the shoji, painting the floor gold. No one asks what's on your mind, and you don't need to explain. Some lessons are not meant to be spoken. They are simply lived. You walk to the DJ, as always, but something in your steps is different. Not faster, not slower, just clearer. Like a fog inside you has finally found somewhere to settle. Daichi is already there. He doesn't look at you at first. But later, during form practice, your eyes meet, and in his, you see something new. Not guilt, not fear, just quiet respect. He sees that you didn't carry the hurt forward, that you didn't sharpen it and return it, that you didn't flinch. You nod, he nods, and that's enough. After class, Sensei Ishikawa calls for help sweeping the floor. He glances toward you. Would you? You bow and step forward. To your surprise, Daichi takes the other broom. No words, just motion. You sweep together. Dust rises, swirls, and disappears. The scent of wood returns steady. Known, you don't. Look at him. You don't speak. But as you pass near the center of the room, he murmurs, "You were right, not to be angry." You pause. He doesn't meet your eyes, but his voice is honest. You say nothing. There's nothing more to prove. You smile, gently, and sweep the dust away. That evening, you return home with lighter steps than you expected. Your mother is shelling peas on the porch. You sit beside her. She doesn't ask anything. She simply offers you one, green, round, sweet. You chew slowly. Then, without turning, she says, "You've grown." You blink, Just a little, she adds. But I see it. You smile. She smiles, too. And you both return to the kind of silence that doesn't need filling. Later, as the sun dips behind the rooftops, you find yourself standing before your father's sword. Still sheathed. Still resting, you bow to it. Not because you want to use it, but because you understand a little more now why he doesn't. That night, as you lie down beneath the same beams, the wind slips gently through the shutters. It brushes your cheek like a quiet question you've already answered. You close your eyes, and this time, sleep doesn't wait. It simply arrives, because your heart is quiet now. And forgiveness, the kind that has no name, is already resting. Beside you, early autumn carries a quieter stillness than summer. The wind feels different now, cooler, edged with dry leaves and the scent of distant smoke. The tatami beneath your feet seems firmer. You're 12, but this morning, you wake feeling slightly older, not taller, not stronger, just more aware. Your mother's in the kitchen, the kettle beginning to sing. Your robe hangs by the door. Your sandals wait in their place. Nothing is different, and yet everything feels changed. Because now you see others more clearly. And today, someone will need you. You reach the DJ a little early. The door slides open with a soft creak. A few students are already inside, moving through quiet stretches. You bow, step in, and begin your own practice. Each motion calms you forward. Turn, pause. There is peace in this rhythm. Soon, the room fills. Akiko arrives. Then, Daishi. He nods, and you nod back. The space between you both has softened into understanding. Then, a new boy enters. You notice him at once. Younger, maybe 10. His robe is loose. His belt is tied too high. His hair still damp, either from rushing or nerves. He bows quickly and glances around, unsure. The look in his eyes is one you know well. It's the look of someone wondering if they belong. No. One says anything, but small signs appear. A whisper, a smirk, a raised eyebrow. You don't move. Not yet, but your chest tightens, because you remember what it's like to stand there, hoping someone might smile. And you remember when no one did. Practice begins. The boy, Kato, is placed in the back row. Sensei shows him the basics. Where to place his feet, how to hold the sword. He listens, he tries. He's awkward, but focused. During paired drills, he stands alone. No one steps forward. And when Sensei looks away, you hear it, a soft laugh. Not loud, but enough. You glance. Over. Two boys beside Daichi's smirk. He doesn't join them, but he doesn't stop it either. Kato hears it. His eyes drop, and that's when you rise. You walk to him. You bow. You offer your shinai. He blinks. Unsure, you nod gently. I'll train with you. His fingers wrap around his sword, and he nods back. You move slowly, not because he's weak, but because you remember how heavy everything feels when you're new. You show him how to step, how to breathe, where to hold his center, and something shifts, not just in his footing, but in his face. He starts looking up when practice ends. He bows to you, to the floor. You bow back. Later, Daiichi approaches. You didn't have to do that, he says. You look at him. Maybe not. But someone had to. He blinks, then nods. I'll help next time. You don't reply. You just return your sword to its rack and step outside into the waiting sun. The walk. Home is quiet. Children chase leaves. A sparrow flutters in a puddle near the well. Everything feels ordinary. But you feel different. You didn't win a match today. You didn't master a new form, but you stepped forward. You stood beside someone when no one else would daw, and that you begin to sense. It's a different kind of strength. At dinner, your mother tells a story about a stubborn neighbor and a crooked fence. Your father listens, smiling without showing his teeth, eating one grain at a time, as if each deserves its own moment. Then he looks at you. You did something today, he says. You glance up. You haven't said a word about Kato, but he knows. You nod. So, he adds, tapping his chest, you've held the sword here before holding it in your hand. You don't answer. You don't have to. The warmth in your chest answers for you. That night, before bed, you write Kato's name in the corner of your notebook. You draw a small circle next to it. Then, beside your own name, you draw another. You don't explain it, not even to yourself. But as you close the book, something feels written deeper, not on paper, but inside you. Later, you lie down. The breeze carries the scent of pine and river through the shutters. A bell rings in the distance. A single dog barks. Then, nothing. You close your eyes. And this time, sleep finds you not because you're tired, but because you are at peace. And tomorrow, when Kato steps into the room with his too loose belt, he will know before anyone says a word that he's not alone. Because you were there, and maybe someday you'll do the same for someone else. Some mornings begin with birdsong or wind brushing softly through paper screens. But today, you wake to a voice. Not your mother's, not your father's. A voice outside your window, steady, low, sharp, not angry, not loud, but pointed, like a stick dragged through dry leaves. You sit up, listening. It's not the words that stir you. It's how they're said. You open the window just a little, across the alley. Kaido stands alone in front of the rice storehouse. His shoulders are small and folded. Facing him is Riku, an older neighborhood boy, known more for mischief than cruelty. But this morning, his words land like stones. Why do you even come here, little mouse? You'll never be samurai. Not even in dreams. Kato doesn't cry. He doesn't speak. But something in him shrinks, a quiet, familiar shape you once knew too well. You don't think, you simply step outside. The air is cool. Your sandals slap against the stone as you cross the alley. Riku doesn't notice you until you're standing. Between them, not like a wall, but like a tree, steady against the wind. He glances at you, amused. Oh, the sword boy speaks. You don't respond with anger. You simply ask, gently, why? He frowns. Why? What? You meet his gaze. Why are you doing this? He shrugs. Just talking. No, you say you're not. You don't raise your voice. You don't accuse. You just tell the truth plainly, softly. The air between you all stills. Riku holds your eyes for a moment. Then he clicks his tongue and walks away. Not fast, not ashamed. Just done. You don't call after him. You turn to Kato and say, "Come on." He follows. Neither of you speaks until the path to the DJ. Then, his voice barely there. You didn't have to come. You glance at him. I know. He walks a little taller after that. Just a little. But you notice, and you say nothing more. Because sometimes, comfort doesn't need words. It just needs someone to stay at the DJ Sensei pairs you with. Daichi for sparring. You bow. You begin. Each strike is measured. Clean. You're not testing strength. You're learning together, which, you remember, is what the sword is for. After class, you walk home beside Dicey. It's not planned. The road simply brings you side by side. At first, silence. Then he says, "I saw what you did this morning." You don't respond. He deserved it. Riku, that wasn't right. You nod, then murmur, "I wasn't sure if I should say something." He glances at you. But you did. You walk on. You. Remember that moment just before you stepped outside. You weren't certain. You weren't brave. You were just present, and maybe that was enough. That night, you help your mother rinse rice. Your hands move slowly through the water. She doesn't ask about your day, but as you set the bowl aside, she says, "You spoke up for someone today." You blink. Her back is still to you. You nod, even though she can't see. Then ask, "How did you know?" She dries her hands. Because your silence was softer than usual. You don't say anything else. You don't need to. Later, you sit outside for a moment, before bed. The stars are faint tonight, half hidden behind clouds. But one, just one, shines clearly above the temple roof. You breathe in and wonder, when is it right to speak? When? Is it better to wait? You don't know yet. But you understand this much. Words can cut deeper than blades. But they can also mend. And sometimes your job isn't to strike, simply to speak. That night, sleep comes like a river. Not fast, not sudden, but steady. You drift because someone spoke. Someone listened. And for a brief, important moment, someone didn't feel alone. The wind is restless this morning. Not wild, not harsh, just unsettled, like it wants to speak, but doesn't know the words. You feel it the moment you open the sliding door. It brushes your sleeve, tugs gently at your collar. The clouds are thick and low. No rain, but the sky feels full, like the world is holding something back. You step outside, your sandals soft against stone, and begin the quiet walk to the DJ. Everything looks the same. But today, the air asks you to notice more. You do the flap of a kimono in the breeze, the creak of a gate, the sound of one drop of water falling and being heard. At the DJ, you bow and stretch and move through your forms, steady, focused. Then, Sensei calls the group together. 3-person teams today. He announces, your name is called. So is Akiko's, and then Riku's. You pause inside, just a moment. Riku hasn't been here for weeks. Not since that morning in the alley. He walks toward you, and Akiko with a calm that feels rehearsed. You bow. He bows. But his eyes don't meet yours. Practice begins. You rotate, observe, join, watch. There's a rhythm to it. A quiet trust that passes between each movement. Akiko is graceful. You are steady, Riku. Sharp, fast, a little. Too close. During a drill, he clips Akiko's shoulder. She stumbles. You speak, gently, careful. He says nothing. Next, he comes at you faster than necessary. His strike slips under your guard. Not hard enough to bruise, but enough. To speak something else, Akiko watches. Your chest tightens, not from pain, from knowing. This isn't practice. Not for him. Sensei calls for sparring. Riku and Akiko go first. She's quicker. He's stronger. Neither yields easily. Then it's your turn. You bow. He bows. The air between you is heavier than the swords you hold. Begin. He rushes. You block. He presses again. You step back. Hold your center. You feel it coming. The moment. The opening. You could strike a clean, fair hit. It would land. It would end things. But you don't instead. You lower your sword. You step back, and you bow match over. The room falls still. Riku stands frozen, then turns and walks away. No bow, no words. Just gone. You stay where you are, breathing, undefeated, untouched, still. After class, Sensei approaches. You had the opening, he says. You nod. I know. Why didn't you take it? You think for a moment. Then, because that strike wasn't about the sword. He watches you, then smiles, not with his mouth, but his eyes, and walks away. Akiko waits by the gate. She doesn't ask what happened. You're steadier than most, she says. I didn't feel steady. She smiles softly. Stillness isn't the absence of feeling. It's choosing what to do with it. You walk home with her words beside you. At dinner, your father pours tea. He moves slowly, carefully. You know. He says, some think a sword is only sharp when it cuts. You look up, but I've seen sharp swords dulled by anger, and dull ones sharpened by restraint. You don't answer, but something inside shifts, like a knot starting to loosen. Later that night, you lie down. Rain begins to fall. Not hard, not loud. Just enough to hear it and be still with it. You think of Riku, the way he fought. The look in his eyes, and for the first time, you don't feel anger. You feel ... understanding. Some people carry so much noise inside. They don't know what to do when they meet your quiet. So they strike and hope you strike back. But you didn't. Not because you were weak, but because you weren't. You chose not to meet force with force. You chose stillness, and in that quiet choice, you were stronger than any blade. You fall asleep before the rain stops, and in your dream, there is no fighting. Only the sound of bamboo leaves and a single breath, held steady in the heart of the storm. You didn't expect the day to end in music. Not when it began so softly. The morning was quiet, the kind of quiet that carries the scent of sweet. Rice cakes and distant drumming. Lanterns were already swaying above the street. Paper cranes hung from the rooftops like folded wishes. Even the crows seemed gentler, as if they, too, were waiting for something good. You woke early, not out of duty, but because something in the air felt light, as if the world itself had exhaled. Your mother was sweeping the porch. Your father sat folding red paper into little triangles. He looked up and said, "You won't need your sword today." You paused. Not because you questioned him, but because you hadn't gone without it in so long. Still, you nodded and placed it in its wooden rack as gently as if it were sleeping. The town feels different on festival days. Even the stones beneath your feet seem softer. You walk beside your mother, past stalls of roasted sweet potatoes and painted fans. Children run past with fox masks, trailing laughter. Someone calls out, "No sword today." You smile. "There's no fighting in the moonlight," the baker adds, wiping flour from his hands. You nod, because it's not just a saying. It's the truth. By afternoon, the square begins to glow. Lanterns blink to life like tiny suns. Drums begin. They're slow, steady rhythm, a heartbeat that rises through the ground before it reaches your ears. You find Akiko at the edge of the square. Her robe is deep blue, stitched with silver. Her sleeves ripple in the breeze. "You look different," you say. "I look like myself." She smiles. You realize, so do you. No armor, no belt, no sword, just you and the night. When the dancing starts, you watch from the edge. People gather, children, elders, shopkeepers. No one moves perfectly, but everyone moves. And it's beautiful. Akiko taps your sleeve. You're allowed, you hesitate. You don't know the steps. You don't want to misstep, but she takes your hand. And you don't pull away. At first, your feet are stiff. Your arms too careful, but the drums are patient. The rhythm waits for you. You watch. You listen. And slowly, without even noticing, you begin to dance. Your breath falls into time with the drum. Your steps loosen. Your shoulders soften. You're no longer trying. You're just moving. You don't know how long the dance lasts. The night stretches when your heart is full. You glimpse familiar faces in the crowd. Daisy, dancing with his sister. Sensei Ishikawa, nodding quietly near the edge. Even Riku, near the food stalls, smiling, not sharply, but softly. And Kato, standing at the back, watching, calm. You raise your hand. He raises his, and in that moment, nothing else is needed. When the music fades and the circle begins to drift, you walk down toward the river. The moonlight spreads across the surface like silk. Akiko sits beside you, knees hugged close. You were smiling, she says. Was I? She nods. A lot. You think for a moment and realize it's true. Not because something was funny, but because, for once, you felt no weight on your shoulders. Just quiet. Your father finds you there before the final drumbeat. He hands you a roasted chestnut, warm and soft. You eat slowly. He watches the water with you. Then says, there's a kind of strength that doesn't need a blade. You glance up. It's the strength to be open, to be light, to dance. Even when your hands remember how to fight. Like a lantern, cupped gently in your palms. Did you always know that? You ask. He smiles. No, but I started to learn. The first time I danced at this festival, that night, you return home with dust on your sandals and a warmth that doesn't come from fire. You don't reach for your sword. You don't need it. Because something else is keeping you safe. Now the memory of music, of laughter, of stillness found in motion. You lie beneath the stars. And for the first time, you understand. To dance is not to forget the sword. It is to remember why you carry it. So there will always be room in the world for joy, for peace. For music, the wind feels different this morning. Not cold, not fierce, but like a question, brushing against the shoji and settling in quiet corners of the house. You wake later than usual. Not because you're tired, but because something inside you asks for stillness. Your mother is gone to the market. The house is hushed. Your father is nowhere in sight. The sword rack is empty. You pause. He rarely takes the sword, only for oiling or remembering. You walk down the hall, past the room where you first learned to tie your belt, past the shelf of old tea bowls, and stop at the back room. The door is cracked open. Sunlight drapes across the floor, and on the tatami mat, beside the writing mat, lies a folded piece of parchment, unsealed, unhidden, resting there as if it had waited. You hesitate, then you step inside and pick it up. It isn't addressed to you, but your name appears inside. You sit and read, quietly, to the master who will teach my son. If these words reach you, then he is already walking the path I once stood on. You may think you are, teaching him how to strike. But I hope you also teach him how to rest. He has my eyes, but not my silence. He listens too well. That will be both his gift and his weight. Please, teach him not to carry every sorrow. Show him how to let things go. Strength is not holding everything inside. It's knowing when to release. He will try to protect, even when he is the one hurting. Help him know he doesn't have to disappear to keep others safe. Let him feel seen, even when he says nothing, especially then. You pause. Your breath catches not from pain, but from recognition. You turned the page. There are things I never said, not from lack of love, but from believing that silence was strength. I see now that I was wrong. He shows me that every day. If he ever forgets his worth, remind him he is already more whole than I became in half a lifetime, and I am proud. Not for who he might become, but for who he already is. The ink trails off there, the last sentence unfinished. You stare at the page. Maybe he was interrupted. Maybe he didn't need to write more. Either way, it feels complete. You fold the letter slowly. Place it back exactly where you found it. Say nothing but something. Inside, you changes, not loudly. Like a tree leaning almost without notice toward light. Your father returns that evening. He doesn't mention the letter or the sword. He boils water, lights the hallway lamp, and asks simply, "Was your day quiet?" You nod. Yes, he nods too. And somehow, the word means more than silence. It means shared understanding. It means, I know you saw it, and I'm glad he sits beside you for a while. No words, it's just presence. And that's enough. That night, you lie on your back instead of your side. The ceiling beams above you are the same, but you see them differently. Not because they changed, but because you did. It's a quiet shift, a gentle realignment. Nothing anyone else might notice, but deeply yours. You think of the letter and the sentence your father never finished. You don't see it as a gap. You see it as an invitation to live the words yourself. To write the ending with your steps. To carry not just the sword, but the stillness, the knowing, the breath in. Between, you close your eyes. Sleep arrives gently, like a hand resting on your shoulder. And somewhere, between one heartbeat and the next, you begin to understand what your father meant. That love, spoken or not, still leaves room for you to write your own story. It begins with the sound of hooves. Not hurried, not loud. Just slow and steady. Soft against the stones outside your house. Clop. Pause. Clop. You look up from the teacup you were polishing. The one with the hairline crack that somehow never breaks. And somehow, you know this sound doesn't belong here. You step outside. A tall, dusty horse stands beneath the plum tree. Its rider, a man in gray, drinks from the well in slow silence. No crest, no sword. Just worn sandals and the kind of quiet that comes from seeing too much. He looks at you, not sharply, just knowingly, as if he expected to be seen then. He walks toward the heart of town. You don't follow, but you don't forget him. By noon, everyone has noticed. The market is noisier, but not happier. Voices sharper. Eyes more careful. The man in gray visits shop after shop. He asks one question. At each, always quiet. Always calm. You finally catch the words at the fish stall. Do you know the name Kajiro Takeda? The shopkeeper flinches. No, never heard it. The man nods, walks on, but the silence he leaves behind feels colder than before. You've never heard the name, but something about it feels heavy. You pass the DJ sensei meets your eyes. He says nothing, but his silence says enough. By late afternoon, the stranger has spoken to nearly everyone except the children. And now he stands near the shrine bell, studying a small folded paper. You walk to him. Have you seen this name? He asks you. Shake your head, then ask, why are you looking? He studies you, then says, he stole something from someone with very little. Then vanished. A pause. I think he's here, or someone is protecting him. You feel something tighten in your chest, not fear, not quite, but something close to knowing. That evening, whispers drift through lantern light. He's stirring things up. Why does it matter now? Should have left it alone. At dinner, your family is quieter than usual. No one mentions the stranger. But your father does say, without looking up, you saw him. You nod. He pours tea, says softly, this town is kind, but not always brave. You stare at the steam rising, then ask, what would you do? He doesn't look up, just says, I'd wait for someone younger to ask that. Then pushes the tea toward you. That night, sleep doesn't come easily. The wind presses against your chest like a question, so you rise, dress, and walk beneath. The quiet moon. You find the man in gray beneath the plum tree by the shrine. He looks up. This time, you speak first. I think I know who you're looking for. His eyes sharpen. He doesn't go by Kujiro anymore. He's older now, helps with carts behind the tofu shop. People like him. The man exhales. Did you see him take what he took? You shake your head. But the one he hurt. Never said anything either. He looks at you a long time, then asks, why tell me this? You answer honestly, because no one else will. He bows, once, deeply. Thank you. And that's all. By morning, the horse is gone. So is the man. And so is the cart fixer behind the tofu shop. No one replaces him. No one mentions him, but the town feels lighter, not fixed. Just less burdened. 2 days later, your father brings you tea, sets it down gently. There are people, he says, who speak when it's safe, and people who speak when it's not. You don't answer. You don't need to, because the silence between you is full of something warmer than words. And that night, when you sleep, you dream not of swords, but of names no longer whispered, and the gentle sound of bells ringing freely in the wind. The rain begins before dawn, not with wind, not with thunder. Just a soft, steady sound, like someone breathing in their sleep. You lie under your blanket and listen. It's not passing. It's staying. Outside, the roof murmurs. Water gathers. In corners. Everything slows down, like the town is taking a deep breath. You rise quietly. Leave your sword on its rack. Your mother says, you may want to stay home. But your father only says, or you may want to see what rain makes possible. You don't know what he means, but you step outside anyway, into the gray morning. The town is smaller in the rain. Colors dim. Sounds soften. You pass only to others, an old man protecting onions beneath his coat, and a girl tapping puddles like drums. At the DJ, your sleeves are damp. Only 4 students have come. One of them is Daichi. You bow to him. He bows back. Neither of you speaks. You've never disliked Daichi. Not exactly, but he's loud. He moves like he's always trying to win. He doesn't know how to leave silence alone. Sensei arrives and says, no forms today. The floor is slick. You will clean, mend. Wait, you begin to sweep. Slow strokes, a rhythm that settles your thoughts. Daichi hums, off-key. Folds towels noisily. You sigh, not loudly, but he hears something wrong. He asks. You shake your head. Then, surprisingly, he walks over. Wrist drills. He offers. Better. Than sitting. You almost refuse. But you remember your father's words. So you nod. It starts clumsy. Tap. Miss. Too fast. Too soft. Then it finds rhythm. Left, right. Switch. Breathe. Without speaking. You begin to understand each other, and slowly you realize you've never really looked at Daichi. Not past the noise, but here, in the quiet storm, something else is visible. Not weakness. Just something unhidden. You both lower your sticks and sit, not from tiredness, just enough. You eat lunch in silence. Better kind of silence. Daichi offers half his bun. You trade a bit of your pickled radish. No words, but something soft passes between you. Later, Sensei joins you by the doorway. He says, do you know what I see when it rains like this? You shake your head. He smiles faintly. That stillness isn't the absence of struggle. It's what? Let's struggle, soften. You don't fully understand. But you nod anyway, because the words feel true. By evening, the rain eases. The air is thick, but peaceful. Dicey stands beside you at the door. I thought you hated me, he says. You blink. I didn't. He grins. No, just couldn't stand me. You smile. Just a little. I get loud when I don't know what else to be, he says. You don't try to fix it. You just say, today, you weren't loud. He nods. You weren't quiet either. Above you, the clouds begin to drift apart. A sliver of moon peeks through. Sensei calls for help. A towel is needed. The sword rack is wet. You and Daishi go together. One holds the cloth, the other dries each blade. The work feels shared not like a task, but like something that matters. When you step out that night, the rain has stopped. The world smells of pine and wet earth. Puddles reflect lanterns like little golden mirrors. Daichi walks your way. At the alley, he asks, "Tomorrow, early practice. Just us?" You pause. Then nod. He grins, like spring has arrived early. You return home with heavy sleeves, but a lighter chest. Something shifted today, not loudly, not suddenly, but meaningfully. Your mother brings dry clothes. Your father offers tea. He doesn't ask about the rain, but says, sometimes rain keeps people apart. Sometimes it lets them meet. You sipped your tea and understand. That night, you sleep deeply. No sword in your hand. No tension in your chest. Only the quiet echo of shared rhythm. And in your dream, the DJ glows with lanterns. No one speaks too loudly. No one stays silent too long. You hear it before you see it. A soft thump, then a rustle. The kind of sound that doesn't ask for attention, but finds it anyway. You pause halfway through tying your sandals. The morning is pale and gentle, like someone still deciding. Whether to wake, you follow the sound out to the walkway behind the house. There, near the old stone basin, sits a small sparrow. Brown, fluffed. Still, it lifts one wing, crooked, then lets it fall again. You crouch, slowly. It doesn't fly, doesn't even flinch. You whisper, "It's all right." Not knowing if it believes you. Not knowing if you believe it yourself. You bring out a basket, line it with cloth. Set a few grains of rice, and gently lift the bird inside. It chirps once, not in fear, more like a sigh. When your mother sees it, she says, "Only the ones that trust will stay still in your hands." You nod. Even though your hands never touched it for long, in the days that follow, the sparrow becomes part of your morning. You check its wing, replace water. Sometimes you hum. Just a thread of sound. You don't name the bird. That would make it feel like it belongs to you. And it douse in single quotes. It begins to hop, to flutter one wing. But it doesn't try to fly. You wait. Healing is not always fast or loud. Daichi visits. He peers into the basket. You keeping it? You shake your head. Just helping. He shrugs. Maybe it likes you too much. You frown. It needs to go. He grins. Sometimes staying is a kind of flying, too. You don't quite understand, but you keep that sentence like a pebble in your pocket. One morning, the sparrow lifts both wings, flutters, lands again. You smile. Tomorrow, you think. But tomorrow comes, and it stays. You carry the basket into the yard. Set it beneath the persimmon tree. Step back. The sparrow looks at the sky, then at you, then stays. Not because it can't go, but because it doesn't want to. Each morning, you move the basket farther. Each night, it returns. You begin to wonder. Are you helping it heal or holding it back? You ask your father. He listens, then says, "Some hearts don't need fixing, just a place to land." So the next day, you stop moving the basket. You just sit beside it and wait. The sparrow begins to follow you, not far, just near, to the porch, to the water basin. Sometimes it watches you train, chirps once at the rhythm of your steps. It never demands. And in that staying, something inside you quiets. A neighbor walks by, sees the sparrow on the post. "That one trusts you," she says. You ask, "Should I make it leave?" She smiles. Not every bird that stays is broken. Later that week, a little girl brings you millet. "For the bird," she says, shyly. You thank her and realize the sparrow is no longer just yours. It belongs to the street, to the trees, to something bigger than you. On the 23rd day, the basket is empty. You search the porch, the garden, the sky. Nothing. It doesn't come back that morning, or the next. You wonder, did you hold on too long, or not long enough? You sleep with the window open that night, but only the wind answers. Then, the morning after, you open the door, and there it is, perched on the post, quiet, watching, like nothing changed, like everything changed. You don't smile. Not right away, you just sit. Let it hop closer. Let it be. You no longer put it in the basket. You don't feed it every day. You don't check its wing. You just make space. And it stays when it chooses to. You stop counting days. You count mornings instead, and each one feels like a soft thread in a longer story. A song you didn't know you'd started singing until something small sang back. That night, your father pours tea. He says, there are those who try to change what they care for. He pours a second cup, and those who care by letting things be. You sip slowly, and finally understand how to do both by simply being near. When you sleep, the last sound is not wings flying away, but feathers rustling into stillness, like trust, like peace, like something small and brave and entirely free. Choosing to stay, you wake before the bell, not from a dream, not from sound, just awake, gently, quietly, as if your body had nothing more to say than now. The sky outside is that color between blue and ash. The in-between, not night, not yet morning. You rise slowly. The house is still. Your breath is the only rhythm. You walk to the window. The small wooden box sits nearby. Inside it, your journal wrapped in the same faded cloth you've used for years. You unwrap it carefully. The cover is cool in your hands. You open to a fresh page. Dip your brush and pause. It's not that there's nothing to write. It's that everything is too much, too soft, too quiet to press into words. You think of the sparrow, the way it returned, not as a guest, but as itself. You think of Daichi, how he stood beside you in silence. How it said, more than sparring ever could. You think of your father, the tea he offers, the scroll he once handed you with only one word, mu, nothingness. But not the kind that means absence. You lift the brush again, then lower it, still no words, and it feels. Right by midday, the sun is gentle. The warmth doesn't lean against you. It just surrounds. You carry your journal, not to write, but to hold. You walk to the small hill behind the temple. There, a girl is threading a flower onto red string. She doesn't look at you. She doesn't need to. She simply continues. You sit, not to speak, not to be seen, but to let your thoughts move like petals on water, going nowhere in particular. Back. Home. Your mother is out. Your father is in the garden, trimming quietly. He sees you. You nod. So does he. That's enough. You sit in your room again. Place the journal on your lap. Turn a page. Then another blank dot, but not empty. You realize maybe these pages are not waiting for ink. Maybe they are already full with a silence you're living. That evening, Daichi comes. He says nothing at first, just sits on the porch, watching shadows. Stretched then, softly. You ever forget what you were going to say and feel like maybe it didn't need to be said after all. You nod. He smiles. Didn't know silence could feel like company. You smile back. And neither of you says anything more. Later, your father hands you a scroll. You open it. One brushstroke. A single circle. No breaks. Just one motion, he says. You can learn a lot from what isn't written. You understand now. At night, you sit once more by the window. Open your journal. And instead of writing, you trace the edge of the paper with your finger. Just once, then again. A quiet loop. Then, close it. No words today. No need. The silence inside you doesn't need a sentence. It only needs space. You place the journal back in its cloth. Tizi blow out the candle. Lie down. Outside. To crickets sing. Not loudly. Not in duet. Just beside each other. You close your eyes. The page waits for tomorrow. Still blank. Still full. Still yours. It wasn't meant to happen. You stayed only a little longer than usual to tie the ends of a scroll more neatly, to sweep one more time beneath the rack, to help Lucia with her bent sandals. Then the others left, one by one, with bows and smiles, and footsteps that faded into the golden evening. You didn't notice. Not at first, not until you stood up and turned toward the door and realized you were alone, completely for the first time. In the DJ, the light was softer now, not golden, but blue, the kind of light that folds over things like a blanket. Not because they're cold, but because it's time to rest. You walked slowly, without meaning to, across the TATAMI. Each step felt softer, each breath slower, without the others, their laughter, their grunts, their footsteps. The space became something else, not empty, but listening. You could hear the ceiling creak, the wind tap against the high. Paper windows. You could hear your own heartbeat. And behind all of that, a kind of hush, like the DJ was waiting to be remembered. Not used. You sat not in the usual spot, but closer to the kamena, the small wooden shrine above the far wall. You hadn't looked at it properly in a while, but now, in the hush, it felt right. You bowed your head, not out of ritual, just out of respect. And then, you stayed still, just breathing. Time passed. You didn't measure it, and then you noticed something small in the corner. A folded cloth, dusty, tucked, just beneath the sword rack. Half hidden behind an old broom. You walked over, lifted it, and found, inside the cloth, a single wooden practice sword. But not just any bakken. This one was older, worn smooth at the handle, darkened by years of palms and sweat and memory, tied to the hilt. With faded thread was a paper tag, the ink faint, now but still readable. 2 characters, not a name, just a phrase. To remain. You sat back down, holding the bakken across your lap, and for a long time said nothing, because something inside you did not want to speak. It wanted only to feel and listen and be with the wood and the quiet and the thought that someone, long before you had trained here, Two Dot had stayed after the others, left had folded their cloth, had tied their thread, and left behind not a sword to fight with, but a sword to be remembered by. You imagined them, not as a warrior, but as someone not so different from you. Maybe. They too once felt small in this room. Maybe they too had once asked themselves, why do I keep coming back? And maybe, one day, they found their answer, not in a strike, not in a match, but in a stillness, after everyone else had gone. Maybe that's why they left the bakken behind. Not as a gift, not as a message, just as a way to say, I was here. I stayed. That was enough. You placed the sword back in its cloth, brushed away. The dust gently dot, then slid it back behind the broom, not to hide it, but to let it stay where it belonged, waiting like it always had. You rose, bowed. Again, then walked toward the door. But before stepping out, you turned and looked at the empty room. One last time, it no longer felt empty. It felt full of echoes, of breaths, of lessons that never needed to be said aloud. And as you stepped into the evening light, you smiled. Not because you understood everything, but because you had been given something you didn't know you needed. A moment, a sword, and a silence that taught. More than words, it began with the quietest knock, so soft you weren't sure if it was real. But when you slid open the door, there he was, Daichi, not grinning, not loud, Dot, just standing, looking down, saying nothing. You stepped aside, he stepped in. Still no words, and somehow, that was all right. He didn't take off his sandals right away, didn't bow, just stood in the entryway. like someone who had walked too far without knowing where they were going. His shoulders were wet, not from rain, but from the weight of something he wasn't ready to name. You waited, not because you expected him to speak, but because it felt wrong to break the hush, like cracking the surface of a still pond just to see ripples. So instead, you made tea. You didn't ask what was wrong. You didn't need to. His hands were folded too tightly. His eyes didn't meet yours. He sat with his back too straight, like if he bent even a little, he might fall apart. You set the tea in front of him. He didn't drink. You didn't ask. You just sat beside him, not across, beside shoulders. Almost touching, both of you watching the candle's flame as it swayed. Steady and soft. The room was small. But tonight, it felt like the only quiet place left in the world. Somewhere outside. A dog barked once. A door creaked. Then silence again. You could hear his breath, shallow at first. Then slowly. A little deeper. Not steady, but not shaking. Time passed without being measured. No clock, no bell, just two boys sitting beside each other on the floor. One carrying something heavy, the other refusing to let him carry it. Alone, still no words, still no questions, but the space between you softened. Not filled with advice, not with comfort, just presence. And sometimes, that's louder than language. Eventually, Daishi spoke. Only 3 words. I messed up. Then he closed his mouth again, as if even that was too much. You didn't ask how. You didn't ask why. You just nodded. Barely. And let the silence stretch between those words, not to erase them, but to hold them gently, like a cloth around a cracked cup after a while. His hands relaxed, his eyes lifted just a little, and you passed him the tea again. This time, he took it, didn't sip, just held it, warm in both palms, as if it reminded him that he still had hands, still had warmth, still had a place to return to. I don't want to talk, he said finally, and you answered with the softest thing you could offer. I'm not here to make you. And then you both just sat. Nothing else needed much later. When the candle burned low and the shadows grew long across the tatami, he stood dot, still no smile, still no bow, but his shoulders were different now, looser, less alone. You walked him to the door dot, and just before stepping out, he paused, looked at you, and whispered, "Thank you for not trying." You nodded, then closed the door behind him, and sat again by the candle, watched the wick flicker once, then steady itself. That night, you didn't write in your journal. You didn't need to, because what you'd given and what he'd received had no shape, no sentence, only stillness, only breath, only the kind of silence that knows it has done something kind, without asking to be seen. It was a small thing, so small, in fact. You almost forgot you had done it. The gate to the back alley creaked that morning, as it always did, and you as usual, reached to close it. That wooden gate had always been closed by your parents. By their parents. Even the wind seemed to expect it shut. But this morning, you didn't. You left it open, not because you meant to, not as a statement, just because the light coming through the alley was softer than usual. Because a cat had passed through and you didn't want to shoo it away. Because the day felt like one of those rare ones where nothing needed locking. So the gates stayed open, and the day moved on. You forgot about it by midday. Too many things filled your hands, errands. A scroll from sensei that needed mending. A visit from Daiichi, who brought a persimmon and ate it as if it was the most serious task of the week. But sometime near late afternoon, as the sun began its low slide behind the roofs, you noticed something. A boy, not one you knew, not from your street or your practice, or even from the market. He stood just beyond the open gate, holding a wooden toy, missing one wheel. He wasn't looking at you. He wasn't looking at the house. He was just looking. Through the way one might look into a place they'd never been allowed to stand before. And he didn't move. Not forward. Not back. He simply was, like a shadow, wondering if it still belonged to a body. You stepped. Outside, quietly, he saw you. Ten said. Then, very gently, you said, "You can come through if you'd like." He didn't speak, but he stepped forward, 1 foot, then another, through the open gate. No rush, no fear, just a breath that had been waiting all day to be exhaled. He didn't stay long, just walked to the persimmon tree, touched its trunk, looked up. Once, as if measuring the branches, then turned back to you and said, "I didn't know what was on this side." You nodded. "There's not much. But you're welcome to look." He nodded then, without another word. Walked back through the gate, disappeared into the evening, and the wooden toy left a faint line in the dust. That night, at dinner, your mother asked, "Did you leave the back gate open?" You swallowed your rice dot, then said, "Yes." She waited, but didn't scold. Just looked toward the window and murmured, "We used to do that a long time ago." Your father nodded once, and nothing more was said, but something had been remembered, and that mattered. The next morning, the gate was still open. You almost closed it. Reflex. Habit. But instead, you stepped past it, into the alley. The sun was warming, the stones. The same boy wasn't there, but a different one was. A girl, this time, smaller, holding nothing, just watching. To sparrows dance. Between shadows, she didn't notice you, didn't need to, and you let her be, because the gate wasn't yours anymore. It belonged to anyone willing to walk through by evening. A few petals had blown in. A small panacon sat beside the wall. You didn't clean them away. You let them stay, like whispers that had something to say, without needing to be said aloud. You went to bed that night, thinking about all the things gates keep out and all the things they keep in. And how sometimes, when you stop deciding who belongs where, the world becomes gentler all by itself. And as you drifted off to sleep, you wondered how many other gates in the world had stayed closed too long, and how many other quiet hearts were waiting on the other side. You didn't plan it. There was no ceremony, no farewell. Just a morning like any other, soft air, light breeze. A robe that fit the same way it always had. The familiar feel of the floor beneath your feet. You reached toward the wall, where the sword always hung. Your hand stopped, not because you forgot, not because you were afraid, but because something inside. You whispered, "Not today." The sword stayed on its hook. Silent, still, you stepped outside, with only your breath and the memory of weight. It felt strange. At first, to walk the path to the DJ without it. Your hand kept reaching for it, out of habit. But, slowly, the motion faded, and your hand simply opened. Sensei noticed, of course. He looked at your side, then at your eyes. He didn't ask, only nodded, then said, "Sometimes the blade must rest so the hand can remember how to feel." You bowed, he turned, and class began as usual that morning. You moved slower, not because you were tired, but because every motion felt louder without the sword's quiet presence. Your steps were lighter, your breathing deeper. Each kata became less of a shape to repeat and more of a way to listen, to the air, to your own limbs, to the space between each gesture. Afterward, you sat alone under the persimmon tree. The wind tugged at your sleeve, and you thought about all the reasons. You first picked up a sword, to be strong, to protect, to belong, to prove something. But now, sitting there, weaponless, wordless, none of those reasons felt heavy anymore. They had been real once. True, but now, they were just part of the path you had walked through and left behind. The sparrow returned, perched just above your shoulder. Didn't chirp, didn't need to. You smiled at it, and this time you didn't think of flight or healing or endings. Only stillness, only sharing the same piece of sky. That evening, you returned home and passed the sword again on your way in. You paused, ran. One finger along its scabbard. It was still yours, but it no longer held you. It waited, patiently, like a teacher. Who knows? The student has learned something that cannot be tested. At dinner, your father poured tea. Your mother passed pickles without comment. Everything was the same, but quieter. Not silent, just settled, as if the house had noticed something and approved that night. You opened your journal, not to write a lesson, not to record a form, but to thank the sword for what it had shown you and for letting you go. You wrote, "It was never about how I held you. It was always about how you helped me hold myself." Then you closed the book and placed it beside the sword. Two things that once defined you. Now, resting together, you slept deeply that night. No dreams of battle, no echoes of shouts, just the feeling of grass under bare feet of wind that asked nothing, of a breath that no longer needed sharpening. And in the morning, you rose without rushing and stepped into the day as someone who no longer needed the sword to know their own shape.